So on the workbench today we have a 1964 left-hand Burns of London New Sonic, and this comes from the collection of Pete Holidai, and it's here with us today to get some issues resolved. And there appears to be some electrical issues going on. It definitely needs to be screened. Pete said it's picking up a lot of interference, and the whammy bar needs to be adjusted. It won't really stay in place. And we've just got to go over the controls as well. There seems to be some confusion about how they work, and the two pickups don't seem to come on together. And we've plugged it in a little bit earlier, and there seems to be some issues with the input jack as well. It's cutting out in parts. And other than that, we're just going to have a quick look at the basic setup as well. The frets look in good condition. We'll probably just give them a bit of a clean, and we'll just see what the neck looks like in terms of straightness, and we'll just make sure the action and intonation work well. And so we'll take you through that whole process now. We're just going to take a quick look at the setup of the guitar as it is before we do any work. Pete said he did some tinkering with it when he first got it just to get it playable, so we're just going to refine that slightly. And the first thing we'll look at is the straightness of the neck. So we're just using our notch straight edge here, and the straight edge sits in between the frets thanks to those notches. And if we just sight along it here, we can see that between the top of the fingerboard and the bottom of the straight edge we've got quite a large gap, and we just want a very small gap, just enough that the strings can vibrate up and down. At the moment it's quite large, so that's going to mean adjusting the truss rod, but it's not off by a huge amount, so it won't require a large amount of adjusting. So that'll be first on our list. So the next thing we'll be adjusting is the overall action. At the moment we're just at the 12th fret here. You can see it's just hovering around 40 thousandths of an inch, which is pretty much perfect. I know Pete likes a low action, so we might just see after we've done the truss rod and that how that affects it, and we might be able to take the action down a small bit. So that's the next thing we'll be looking at. So another issue we have is that the guitar doesn't actually have a rear strap button, and also if we just take a look at the back here, we can see just here on the upper horn there should actually be another strap button there, but it doesn't even appear to have ever been drilled for one. There's nothing around here that would have been used as a strap button, so myself and Pete both think that somebody probably used like a bootlace or something around the headstock for the other end of the strap. So we'll be installing a new strap button here as well as on the rear. So we're going to press ahead now with doing our shielding inside the cavity and on the back of the pickguard, and checking the grounding and stuff like that. So we're just going to take all the strings off and then remove the pickguard. So with the strings off, we're just taking out the last of the pickguard screws here. I'm just going to lift the pickguard off and see what we're dealing with under here. So just taking it nice and delicately. That seems to be coming away easy enough. We do have a ground wire of some kind, and so that's what we're looking at inside. So we'll just get in closer and take a better look at that. So this is underneath the pickguard. We can see exactly when this was made. So we're not like the Fender Strat we did for Pete, where we had to work out codes and they use different dates and numbers for stuff. We can see exactly when this was done. So there we are, 23rd of December 1964. And that's the back of our pickups here. So the wiring all looks okay. And our bridge pickup. Okay, and just looking down at the controls here. So we've got our 2 volumes and our tone and our output jack. So it all looks okay. Some of the solder joints look a bit dry. We might just have to tip them with the soldering iron to let them reflow. That could be the cause of some of the issues we're having. There's the output jack. So a few little bits of corrosion on that. That could be why it's cutting out on that. So we'll just give that a bit of a clean with a fiberglass pencil. And there's our switch as well. Our capacitor. So it doesn't look too bad, and we actually have got a ground wire. I was worried we may not. And that seems to be connected to the bridge or the vibrato unit in some place. We'll just double check on all that. So it doesn't look like we're going to have too many issues. We'll clean the pots, and as I said, we'll reflow some of the dry solder joints, and that should take care of most of it. But we'll be taking a lot of these pots off and that, just so we can get some of our copper shielding in, and the same with the cavity. So we'll press ahead with that now. So we're just checking where our ground wire is running to, and if you can just make out here, you can just see the line where the bridge originally was. And as far as I know from Pete, this isn't the original bridge. But what I didn't realise is, if you can just hear this, that this bridge is just stuck down with some just very light tape, so it's actually a floating bridge and not a fixed bridge. So we'll have to look into that now when we're restringing, to make sure we get it positioned exactly, so we get our intonation exactly as we want it. So that also means now that our ground wire is actually going to the vibrato unit. So we'll just have to work around that as we do all our shielding. So with the vibrato unit opened, you can see our ground wire comes all the way through here, and this here looks like a splice. Now whether that's from the factory originally, although judging by the newness of this wire, I don't think it is. It seems that the wire was snipped at some point and then spliced onto this new wire. So we'll have to look into exactly if this is connected to the right spot now, because we know it's now not original. And as we look at the original wire coming back, it's actually just wrapped in place around the spring. It's not actually physically connected properly. So we'll have to find a spot somewhere, and we'll, as we just hear, and we'll solder that in place to get a proper electrical connection. So that should help with some of our grounding as well. Plus, because it's only lightly wrapped around, it means you can pull the coil straight through, and it'll just make shielding the cavity a whole lot easier. So there's the 4 screws that we took out of the vibrato unit, and you can see this screw here is obviously completely different to the others. So there's obviously been some tinkering done or something going on there. And here's just a quick look at the body now that we've completely taken off the pickguard, the bridge and the vibrato unit. You can see all the routing that was done there. So next what we're going to do is we're going to fill this cavity with some copper shielding. So the first thing we're going to do is just rub around the cavity here to create an imprint of exactly what we're going to need, just to get us started, so we can cut some pieces out and start laying them in. So we've got a rough idea there. That'll probably be impossible to come up on camera, but we've got a shape there now we can now cut out and use for the bottom of the cavity, and then start going around and doing the rest of the walls. So we've got our cavity shielded now, and we're just going to test the continuity of it. So we're just using these probes here and looking at our multimeter to make sure we're getting the appropriate reading in all areas. And we are. It looks good. So this is just to make sure that all parts of the copper tape are all interacting with each other and forming a continuous loop, so that this area here is in the same electrical signal as this area down the back here. So to make sure when we do put our top on that all areas touch each other and that we do have continuity between it all. So next we're going to strip down the pickguard so we can shield that. And so we're just going to take off the pickups and all the controls. And our first thing will be to take off these control knobs. It's just a small flathead screw. And there's a lot of dirt coming out with it. There's our controls starting to come off. And so we'll just keep going, and we'll take out the pickups as well as our 3-way switch and our output jack. So that's our wire and harness all out, and we've got our pickguard here. So we're going to shield the back of this. There's our pickups. I'm not going to even attempt to try and take the covers off in case anything happens to them. We're just going to leave them as is. And so there's our pots, our 3-way switch and our output jack. As we said, we've got some corrosion, it seems, in there, so we may do some cleaning on the inside of that. So what we're going to do is now we'll shield the back of the pickguard, and then we'll put everything back together. So we're going to shield this in a few different sections, and the reason being is we want to keep this date stamp visible. So we'll just do a section here, and a section to end it, and we'll just get them to cross over each other so we get the continuity we need across the shielding. And this part here we don't actually need to worry about shielding it, because it'll be pressed in between the two pickups where it's just solid wood, and we're not worried about shielding it anyway. So we've got our pickguard shielded now, so we're just going to move on to cleaning up our electronics, fixing any dry solder joints we might see, and just any other little small bits of cleaning that need to be done. So we're just cleaning our pots now, so we just take our little cleaning adapter here, and it just screws on to the top of the pot. And then we take our switch cleaner and we just spray it in. So just give that a second to go in. We take off our adapter and just give the pot a good turn, and it already feels a lot smoother. So we're just using our fiberglass pencil inside the output jack now to clean the inside of the contacts. And you can see definitely some dirt coming off there. So now we'll just get ready to reassemble the whole thing. So we're just going to start putting our pickguard back together now. So we just try and get everything lined up as best we can, and then we'll just start to attach them back in place one by one. So one small change we're going to make is we're not going to put this spring back in. This is really big, really thick. It was used to hold in one of the pickups, and it's definitely not original, and the other three are all a different size. So we're just going to replace it with the smaller one, which will match the others that are already on there. So one of our control knobs, the set screw inside, is completely seized. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to drill it out and then put in a new set screw. So we're just going to do that now. So just there you can see we've changed out the set screw that was there to a hex head, as opposed to the slotted ones that were here, because they're just waiting to strip, and this one actually did. So that's just one small change we've made, but barely noticeable, and we'll just get ready now to put the rest of the guitar back together. So before we put the guitar back together, while we have it in this condition, we're just going to give it a quick clean while we can. We'll give the fretboard a quick clean, and we'll polish the frets as well while we have the opportunity. So just give our fretboard a quick cleaning now. So we're just about to start putting everything back together, and we're just running our ground wire back through here to the tailpiece. And what we're going to do is we're going to keep this ground wire because it's the same colour some as the other wire, and so we think this is the original. But this splice that seems to have been put on the end, you can just see where the join is. There feels like there is cracks in it and that, and I've no idea why it's there, because the original ground wire is long enough to go to the tailpiece. So we're just going to snip off that splice and use the original ground wire that's here to do the connection. So we're just moving our pickguard back into place here, and it sits on fine. And just get all the holes lined up. And so we're just looking for now little areas like this where you can see some of the shielding. So we'll go back over that and just take off that little edge there so it can't be seen. And as I said, this is the ground wire here. It's plenty long enough for what it needs to do. Can't think of any reason at all why this was put onto the end. So we'll just go ahead, we're going to trim the end of this ground wire so we can solder it in place onto part of the tailpiece, and then we'll screw the pickguard down. So we've got our ground wire soldered in and we're just about to put the plate back on, but we've just noticed that this corner here is supposed to be where the fourth screw goes in, and there's actually nothing for it to attach to. It's just a hole straight down. So what we're going to do is we're just going to patch the inside of this a little bit and just give the screw something to bite into when it's screwing down. So that's our little sliver of wood just there. It's being snipped down flush with the surface. So we'll put our plate on now and we should be able to bite into that. So we're just tightening up the vibrato arm in place. So it shouldn't move too much, but once we get the strings on, we may end up moving it again, we'll see. So now we're just going to get the bridge in place and we'll put the strings on. So we're just taking the bridge here and we're just taking a scalpel blade and we're just going to trim away some of this excess tape that's under here. So just so you don't see it when you're looking down at the surface of the guitar, but it'll still protect the finish on the guitar from the metal rubbing against it. So that's a new set of strings on her. So what we're going to do now is just tune her up and do our action and intonation and all that kind of stuff, and just get her ready to play again.